This is your weekly investigation into all things legal. This is Law and Disorder on the Dean Obeidallah Show.
Welcome back. Dean Obeidallah Show. That's right. On Tuesday, we have our own sound effect. Law and Disorder, a weekly segment, generally with Danny Cevallos when he's not being too big for the show or taking care of his baby. And right now in studio, MSNBC's legal analyst, Danny Cevallos, dressed in something from page 12 of the Abercrombie & Fitch catalog or from the JLL Bean, page 7.
I have to tell you, Dean, at this point,
you're wearing
I'm
a vest.
Parent.
It's a sleeveless vest with a corduroy collar. What is going on?
This is a keep me warm vest, and it's a try to keep my burgeoning belly out of the from being displayed in the studio.
It seems like a MacGyver type of vest. Does it have little pockets to store like special knives and tools in it?
It
looks like that. I'm not kidding.
It's quilted, right? And it's under the jacket that I wore here, so I didn't have to layer up too much. Right. And it keeps the core warm, Dean. It's good for skiing, and it looks like the quilting aspect makes it at home in a hunting lodge. It's very nice. And now it's sleeveless. Now, don't let your listeners think I have sleeves on my T-shirt here.
Right. It's not like
I'm not walking around. Right. I'm not walking around like some dude from New Jersey, Dean. No offense.
Where's
no
Jersey?
offense.
Matt, I think that Danny, how long I've done the show, a year and a half, no one said the word quilting before, so we've got that.
Absolutely.
So we have quilting off the list, the bucket list of words not said before in the Dean Obeidallah. We got a few others, but that's right up there. So quilting, take it off the list. So Danny, let's talk about some real stuff going on here. First of all, I appreciate your time that you come in here, and it's very nice of you because you got a baby, and we joke around here. No. We joke around a little bit, but it's not like there's someone else who works at your building. I'm not going to say who. Just can't have a normal conversation. Everything just busts my chops to the point where I texted him. I'm like, you got to stop. You need to have some layers, buddy.
Well, I think you're denying your audience your skills as a comedian because you're so passionate about politics that there's really very little banter on this show. I mean, it's mostly politics. It's intense. It's progressive radio at its finest.
We got the best banter of all the channels right here. We banter. On the hashtag make bantering great again. Let's talk about, we learned something about Robert Mueller. This wasn't on the list of issues, but I know you follow everything. It turns out today that the Mueller investigation looks like it might not even be getting close to an end because Rick Gates, who was Trump's deputy campaign manager, the Mueller's defense team and Gates' attorneys said that Mueller's not ready to put the sentencing of Gates in motion. Gates, quotes, continues to cooperate with respect to several ongoing investigations, and accordingly, the parties do not believe it's appropriate to commence the sentencing process at this time. It's a simple story. It wasn't a huge story, but what does that say to you? Because there were all these rumors. He's about to be done. He's about to be done. This is today, saying ongoing, and that we're not ready for sentencing.
Yeah, Matt, play my sound from 2 weeks ago. Here we go. Dean, I got to tell you, I caution everyone to not consider this investigation over. I said this 2 weeks ago. I said it a month ago. And let me point to...
What the hell is going on?
That was Matt. That was Danny 2 weeks ago. So you're saying that these people are saying this craziness that it's close to over, not even close to true.
Let me just put this out there because it's rare. I need to crow because it's rare that I make the right call. This is why I don't gamble.
The vest was not the right call.
The vest, horrible call.
Sorry, I'm kidding.
But it's rare that I make a prediction and stick with it. And let me tell you why. This was a very reasoned prediction, and a few weeks ago or a month ago, there was one story, I think it was in the Times, that said, sources say Mueller is wrapping it up at the end of February. Now that went against the great weight of evidence suggesting that Mueller is not finished. Let me give you a couple examples. Number one, the heavy redactions on the Flynn and other sentencing and other documents. The sealed documents. Those indicate that there's still an ongoing investigation. The fact that the grand jury is extended for another 6 months. And the fact that, and I've said it from the beginning, white-collar investigations, generally speaking, take years, even with one defendant. And that's to negotiate a cooperation agreement, and you put off sentencing time and time again. And then when things are finally over, you can get sentenced, and it may be a year and a half down the road. This is one of the bigger white-collar investigations of the modern era. The notion that it would be wrapped up in a year and a half or 2 years is possible.
Right.
And it is possible if, for example, Dean, and you won't like this, if there was nothing there. There's no there. But as we've seen,
what are you
there
talking
many,
about?
many
Nothing in the Mueller report?
Yeah.
So interesting, Danny, what you're saying is that the confirmation of William Barr is actually very important for those who want to see this investigation be concluded and not end abruptly by a Trump appointee just firing Mueller.
That's right.
And I want to play a clip today, which, look, William Barr from people I like, who we watch on MSNBC, or former U.S. attorneys or DOJ people who criticize Trump all the time. Went on, I watched one today, again, Daniel Goldman, I think it was, or maybe not him, but someone we all see on MS saying, I know William Barr, and he's a really good guy, and he's not someone you have to be concerned about. And these are the same people who attack Trump all the time. And here is Barr's testimony today when asked about Robert Mueller by now chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Lindsey Graham. Here's clip number 5.
You say you've known Mueller a long time. Would you say you have a close relationship with Mr. Mueller?
I would say we were good friends.
Would you say that you understand him to be a fair-minded person?
Absolutely.
Do you trust him to be fair to the president and the country as a whole?
Yes.
When his report comes to you, will you share it with us as much as possible?
Consistent with regulations and the law, yes.
Do you believe Mr. Mueller would be involved in a witch hunt against anybody?
I don't believe Mr. Mueller would be involved in a witch hunt.
It's kind of interesting, isn't it? And, you know, Barr's got a record. I mean, he's an establishment Bush Republican. They showed a picture earlier during George Bush the father's thing, standing him right next to Robert Mueller. I mean, he knows, and he said, I'm good friends with Robert Mueller. So I feel a little better. He also said other things like, I cannot think of any good cause to fire Robert Mueller. And he goes, I don't think he would ever give us the reason to do that because he knows Mueller well. When I heard that part, we can get into the negative stuff in a second. I was like, why did Trump pick this guy? This is kind of interesting. This guy would stand up under oath. I don't know if Fox News is going to play that clip. They probably won't play that clip, but that's an important clip right there.
Yes, those are good things, but you can also see why Trump chose Barr. Number one, that mysterious memo that he just decided to write out of nowhere, saying that, I shouldn't say out of nowhere, but I mean, he's somebody with an opinion. His opinion matters to a lot of folks. So here he writes this memorandum saying, talking about whether or not the president obstructed justice and taking the position, which is not an unreasonable position, that the president has the plenary authority essentially to hire and fire people like James Comey. That's not a crazy position at all. There are several people who share, several valid academics share that view. But at the same time, you can see why that memo made him appealing to Trump, and the fact that he's already been Senate confirmed. It would be hard for the Senate or Congress to complain about William Barr because they've confirmed him before, and I believe unanimously.
It was years ago, though.
Yeah, it was years ago. That's true. That's true. But at the same time, Trump's looking for someone that isn't going to get skewered by the committee, and they found it really in Barr, someone who can answer all these questions. And I think back when Trump chose him, Barr was an appealing choice for Trump. Now Barr realizes that in order to get confirmed, he's got to make sure that he gives the right answers. I'm not saying he's being sneaky, but I mean, I think these are consistent with what everybody expected.
And he also said under oath that he thought Jeff Sessions made the right decision recusing himself, which ultimately became Jeff Sessions' downfall in the eyes of Donald Trump. There was a lot of discussion about would he make the Mueller report known to the public, and that's a lot of the news media today. And we just heard that one clip where he said, I'll do it consistent with the regulations.
Consistent
right,
with
we'll get
the
that
regulations.
in a second. Here is Senator Dianne Feinstein asking him again about the report. Here's clip number 6, please.
Thank you. And I have 2 questions from the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. Will you commit to making any report Mueller produces at the conclusion of his investigation available to Congress and to the public?
As I said in my statement, I am going to make as much information available as I can, consistent with the rules and regulations that are part of the special counsel regulations.
Will you commit to making any report on the obstruction of justice public?
That's the same answer.
Thank you.
So that's, and then there was an exchange with him and the senator from Hawaii where it seems slightly more muddled, but he was pretty clear that he will do it consistent with the regulations. That brings us to the big question. We've discussed this before. Just in a nutshell, when Robert Mueller gives his report, it goes to the Department of Justice because that's who mandated him to do this investigation. What happens then?
From there, it is there's a summary report that is prepared for Congress, but ultimately the DOJ has the final say on whether or not the report gets released. But then again, I think Congress can release what briefing they receive. So it's very interesting that he used that language. I think people should view his statement as a positive one because, at minimum, he is committing to releasing the report to the extent he is allowed by regulations. You could have just as easily gotten a response that said, this is the kind of thing that should be kept concealed and added consistent with the regulations, because obviously he's going to act consistent with the law and consistent with regulations. Now, might he use it as an out? Possibly, but he did commit today to a policy of openness as to the report, as much as he's allowed to do.
Right, and I'm looking at the regulation right here. For those playing at home, it's 28 Code of Federal Regulations, Section 600.8C, which is something, just a nightmare book, the CFR book.
Oh, the CFR.
And it says,
oh, boy. At
the conclusion of the special counsel's work, he or she shall provide the Attorney General with a confidential report explaining the prosecution or declination decisions reached by the special counsel. So a lot of people in some of the legal writings have harped on the word confidential, giving the AG more latitude in what they're going to reveal or not. It also says in Section 609 of this relevant CFR that the Attorney General shall notify the chairs and ranking members of the House and Senate Judiciary Committee upon conclusion of the special counsel's investigation. So he's obligated to inform Congress when he gets his report. Even if Mueller
right.
gives it in, and he's got to tell AG Barr, and I assume he'll be confirmed,
Yep.
has to tell Congress. You know, I remember other members of Congress, I think I had on Mark Pocan, a Democrat from Wisconsin, who said, if they didn't give us the report, we would start just calling. He said, if we get the House, now they have the House, we would just start calling witnesses and explaining the report in front of everyone's eyes, what is not confidential, what's not privileged. And America's going to hear the story of this report no matter what. So
that's true.
People should not worry that all of a sudden, because we paid for this report, you and I, our tax dollars, millions of dollars went to a report. He can't hide it. If there is, so clearly though, if there is confidential information, whatever that might be deemed, and I'm not sure how that's interpreted, it could be limited. Like we don't see the entire 300 pages or book volumes. I don't even know how big this report could be.
That's right. And some of the things to think about, there are valid reasons for keeping parts of the report confidential. For example, it may relate to an ongoing investigation that doesn't have to necessarily do with Trump or Russia collusion, but maybe something else that U.S. attorneys stumbled upon that is wholly unrelated, which happens fairly often. I mean, when U.S. attorneys and federal investigators start digging deep into a particular topic, sometimes they unearth some other bodies where they're buried.
Like the Turkish issue with Michael Flynn, and there's some other investigations and prosecutions going on that are in that world. And maybe not, they prosecuted if it wasn't for this. And this is all, of course, folks, separate to Michael Cohen and here in New York with the Southern District of New York and the implications by Michael Cohen under oath that individual one is Donald Trump directed him to commit felonies. That's a whole different story. Now, there was a big debate about Democrats had wanted before the hearing William Barr, to recuse himself over the Mueller investigation. But they were saying that because of his past statements and that memo he wrote, that he voluntarily wrote this memo, that he should be recused. From your sense of recuse, I mean, just in the grand scheme of things, do you think it would be a good idea? Because he went back and forth on it. Because, well, I want to get an opinion from ethics, but I'm going to make my own decision.
That's right. That's very interesting because he made it very clear that he would consider the recommendations of the ethics folks, but ultimately he would even consider going against what they said because he's his own person. He's going to make his own decision. And in that sense, he's very different than Jeff Sessions, because Jeff Sessions, it appears, took that advice and used that as the basis for his recusal. What Barr is saying is, hey, even if the ethics folks tell me that I have to recuse, I might not. I might not, because I make my own decisions. And I should add, from elsewhere in his testimony, I make my own decisions, and I'm too old to care whether or not, what you folks think of me. I've already lived my life. I'm independent. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what he said today.
And he makes reportedly $1 million a year as a partner in his law firm.
Someone that accomplished, I would expect he makes more, but maybe that's about what he makes a year. I'm sure.
It's interesting. You mentioned the memo. There was exchange between Barr and Lindsey Graham. I found numerous. Barr says, I write this memo, and I heard Rod Rosenstein likes really long, wonky memos like I did, so I wrote whatever it is page. So then here is Lindsey Graham talking to Barr, giving him advice on dealing with Trump in front of everybody, in front of the world. Here's clip number 3.
Don't you think President Trump is a one-pager kind of guy?
Excuse me?
President Trump is a one-pager kind of guy.
I suspect he is.
Okay, just remember that. Go ahead.
Yeah.
How funny is that? That should be on all the. I hope Colbert pulls it. Lindsey Graham going. And I had David K. Johnson on. He goes, one pager. No, he's a headline. He's a fortune cookie type of guy.
That's right.
He's not even a one pager, because 15 pages. There's no way Trump's going to read that.
That's right.
And
yeah,
what I thought was interesting, Barr, and I didn't watch this part of it, I just read it, that Barr, and I think it came up in the testimony or at least the reporting, he talked about sending other unsolicited memos to DOJ, including one on Bob Menendez. Did you see that? From New Jersey?
Yes.
Saying don't prosecute him for this bribery scandal because it's going to open up doors. And Menendez is on judiciary. Oh, no, he's not on judiciary. I don't think he's on judiciary.
He's not.
He may have been at one point. And it was interesting that he brought up, I told him not to prosecute a Democratic member of the Senate.
Right.
In front of everyone, trying to show like this wasn't a Trump thing. This is my legal view of the issues. I'm just sharing it.
And turns out he's right. Look, if you're at that level, it's not like just some random attorney writing something. And man, I have to go back to something you said. You think Barr makes $1 million a year as a partner?
I read something.
That is mind-boggling. Consider this, folks. And this is my argument for go out to an open mic and start telling jokes instead of considering law school, because here you have probably one of the top 10 most accomplished lawyers in the entire country.
Maybe makes
and he's
more.
Maxing out at $1 million a year.
He might be making more.
True, you go into stand-up. You get the corporate gig circuit. You start.
You don't make $1 million.
You start. You could do a couple nights at Bananas.
I'll have to look
Cleveland.
it up. I heard someone said $1 million. Although, I mean, look, when I was in New York and there was a managing partner at Weil Gotshal making reportedly $4.5 million a year.
That's a little more. That's a little more consistent. Someone like William Barr should be making a lot more than $1 million a year. I mean, my goodness, his resume is a ream of paper. It's unbelievable.
I don't think people get what lawyers. They have to be big firm lawyers, folks, and partners, like real equity partners. You'll hear about a baseball player making like $20 million in a year, but their shelf life, their window is small. These guys could be partners for 25 years, raking in a few million a year if they're bringing in business. Even could be some spikes, some bonus years, and they could lose it too.
That's right, but you're not considering the 15 years as an associate where you're not making that money, trying to become.
You're making good money though,
and you're making good money, but you're not making partner money. And by the way,
15 years as an associate, that's too long. Usually it's 7 to 10, but they have stages of partners.
Exactly.
Like you come in, you're a non-equity partner,
right?
Which is just like being an associate and paid a little more,
right?
Then you buy into some partnerships, or you're losing money to make money. It's a remarkable thing.
That's right. And we're talking about the top white shoe firms, names like Weil Gotshal, the names that there's a dozen or so names that everybody knows. You talk about some mid-range firm. No, the partners there are probably not making at an insurance defense firm, mid-size. Yeah, they're not making $1 million a year. It's pretty crazy. I'm telling you, kids out there, work on your 5 minutes. Go down to open mic. That's the career to get into.
So right now, the senator from Hawaii, who I'll destroy her name, Maria Herrera?
Yes, it's very difficult, yeah.
So I just say the senator from Hawaii.
Yeah.
Mazie Hirono.
It's Hirono.
Mazie Hirono is talking about will Barr release the report. From last I saw, I don't think the entire Watergate report is still, just parts of it, just recently were released. I mean, it's not, Kenneth Starr was unique.
An anomaly.
Right. That he actually had 11 or 13 articles of impeachment that I think he used the terms, there's substantial and credible evidence of these articles of impeachment, and it got released to the public. And that was remarkable reading. You're like, oh my gosh, look at what's going on here. So all of us would love to see that. Now, you touch on something else. What if Mueller comes back and says, I don't recommend any charges again? Or I don't know if Mueller's going to recommend that. I keep thinking the Starr report where there was a recommendation. What if he comes back and it's just...
There's nothing.
Right. He says Trump concerning conduct, but never rise to the level of criminality.
Here's my prediction, since I'm on a prediction roll.
I don't like this.
Lately.
I don't like where this is going.
I think it's very possible that Mueller could come back, and as to Russian collusion, he may find nothing, at least as to Trump. He may find other folks being involved, and we've seen that already, other folks who have just played too fast and loose with the law, or really, they probably didn't fully understand the law. But what we do know is the things that aren't related to Russia that relate to the way Trump did business in his life. And the fact that I think Trump's defense against the Michael Cohen payoff to porn stars and whoever else, his main defense of that is ignorance, because the law, this is maybe one of those rare laws that requires a high level of knowledge. But I mean, realistically, Trump had no idea that those payments had anything to do with campaign finance or anything. He was just trying to pay people off, most likely. But
I completely disagree with
you. Think he was aware?
It was like 1 week before the campaign, he's paying off these women to keep them quiet.
But
we knew it helped the campaign.
Was he aware that that would be a campaign finance violation?
I say yes, because I wrote about this, Dan, and we talked about this, that he has had other run-ins on campaign finance issues.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote about a FEC, Final Election Commission case, when he almost ran for president in, I think it was 2012, when him and Michael Cohen were both defendants in this case. And even it was a different scenario, it had to make him aware that there were a lot of regulations. He had to hire lawyers, they had to litigate it, and there's a lot of little regulations. And maybe he can say I thought I was relying on Michael Cohen, but to form shell companies and funnel money secretly
that's the part.
That's a little.
So that's the thing that I think Mueller has uncovered, and that's why he's handed certain things off to the Southern District of New York, because he recognizes that this isn't really related to Russia, but it looks like criminality. And sure enough, Michael Cohen's pleaded guilty to that conduct. So I think it's very possible that Mueller could come back and say, wait, as to Russia, as to obstruction, nothing on the president. Lots of other bad guys. We've indicted a lot of other folks, but nothing specifically as to our mandate. Mueller might stretch it if he sees other conduct that falls within the rubric of Russia or collusion, but it's very possible. On the other hand, I think the more thorny issues are going to be all of the conduct that Trump was involved in before the presidency, and whether or not he can be charged for that or impeached. And I think that's really the challenge for the Mueller team, is putting together what should be in the report. Of all the things we've uncovered, what should be in there? It's
a massive report, amen. Let's take a quick break, come back with more of our friend Danny Cevallos on our weekly segment, Now We Have a Name, Law and Disorder. Be right back. You're listening to the Dean Obeidallah Show, where we crush Trump's lies every single day.
On Sirius XM Progress 127.
to the Dean Obeidallah Show on SiriusXM Progress.
And welcome back, Dean Obeidallah Show. We're live right here. It's Law and Disorder. It's Tuesday, our third hour. I'm joined by Danny Cevallos. You see him from MSNBC doing a great job over there. Danny, this is not a legal thing, but let me just ask you before we get in a couple other cases. This breathlessness about that Trump was being investigated, counterintelligence by the FBI as a potential Russian asset, based just on source reporting with no names. And cable news went so crazy to the point where I'm like, this is why some people don't like cable news anymore, because it was just so over the top. And there was no context. Like, every now and then someone would be responsible, go, well, if true. But it would most of the time just assume true, bang,
Right.
and not giving you the context that the Robert Mueller investigation began right around that same time, meaning that was likely the physical manifestation, the visible manifestation of that. So it may have just ended. It may not. We don't know the answer. It could have literally ended then. And they go, Robert Mueller, you take over and you do everything.
That's right.
We don't know, but this seems like an irresponsibility in the air over this.
Well, I think that it was one of those reports that that there just wasn't enough to really it was difficult to discuss because
watch cable news for the weekend.
No, I mean, and I discussed I was on there talking about it too, but the news that there was a counterintelligence or an investigation is difficult to talk about because many counterintelligence investigations never become public at all. They don't result in a criminal prosecution. So all we're really left with is that this investigation may have begun and it dovetailed into the Mueller investigation, and maybe he took it over, maybe he didn't. We don't really know a whole lot about that. So I don't really know. I don't know what to make of it because without a lot more detail. Let's hear it. Yeah, let's hear you. I feel like you have an opinion.
No, I always have an opinion. Doesn't based on reality. Here's the thing. I try to honestly, despite getting pulled to be more hyperbolic, when it comes to any kind of legal issue, on race issues, the societal issues, I'll be over the top because I tend to say what I believe, and that seems over the top to people. It's what I believe. When it comes to legal issues, find myself more restrained, trying to be more responsible because my goal, honestly, is to teach in a way on legal issues if you don't follow the law, so that if you quote me, you're not misled. Because I don't like when even people quote other progressive hosts, and I go, who told you that? And they'll say it. I'm like, that's not correct. And I don't want an illegal thing. Here's something, and I went through this with David Kay. I went back to Rod Rosenstein's May 17, 2017 memo and read it. Trump gets fired. He fires James Comey on May 9th. 8 days later, just 8 days later, Rosenstein appoints Robert Mueller. And the mandate very specifically, quote, to investigate, quote, any links and or coordination between the Russian government and individuals associated with the campaign of President Donald J. Trump. The firing of James Comey and the idea that you would say links and or coordination the firing Comey does not necessarily get you to the point where you put in writing any links and or coordination. I don't think I think Rod Rosenstein irresponsibly puts those words in unless there's something going on. I mean, William Barr today spoke very glowingly of Rod Rosenstein, and he likes him a lot. I think there's something here that they're sort of suggesting that we know there's some kind of links. We've seen enough to go public. To me, this is more stunning now reading this than the idea in FBI counterintelligence, because this was the visible manifestation of whatever they had. They have something. They got them to this. Just firing Comey doesn't get you to that. Firing Comey is obstruction on its face, perhaps. I don't know. Whatever.
That's an interesting
It's a bad personnel decision.
Right.
How do you get from, I'm going to fire Comey, and 8 days later, I'm going to do this? Because something beneath the surface is going on. They're seeing it. And it's so many things boxes are being checked or evidence is being gathered, and they're getting concerned. And Comey is going forward somewhere, and he gets fired. And then they hear Trump 2 days later have the meeting at the White House with the Russians. No American media is allowed. We find out from Russian reporting he's gleeful over firing Comey. May 12th, three days later, he goes on NBC telling Lester Holt, I fired him over the Russia thing. And then you have this order, May 17th. This, to me, is a huger smoking gun now looking at this. They know there's something. Enough to go public with this. I mean, think about this.
So you're
Trump's
saying
name is in the order. President Donald J. Trump. It's not a campaign. President Donald J. Trump's name is in this order.
So you're saying that it's an interesting argument. Are you, in part, you're saying that had President Trump legally fired James Comey and it was a valid exercise of his power,
You don't appoint a special counsel just for the firing of James Comey.
Exactly. Now, the counter argument to that is, well, we got to be very careful and turn over all stones. But as you say, that would take 30 seconds.
8 days later to do this.
Right.
Something, and they might just be erring on the side of, they already had George Papadopoulos saying in the bar to the Australian diplomat that Russia's going to help us. They likely knew about things that maybe we know now about what we didn't know then, like the Trump Tower meeting, because only about a month later that gets leaked by New York Times that Donald Trump Jr. had a meeting in Trump. So they probably knew about the Trump Tower meeting. And it might be everything we know now is everything they knew then, and there's nothing more. I can't tell you.
But in what universe I keep coming back to this. In what universe if Trump believes that the FBI is hot on his tail and that they're about to uncover bad things about him, in what universe does he believe just firing the FBI director is going to end this, and that there isn't going to be any backlash? I mean, yes, I think your theory is
David
interesting.
K. Johnson
because
earlier, who knows him for 30 years and is a biographer, talked about that very thing, and he said only Trump, from the business world where he can just fire and dispose people, only he would think it's completely plausible, because that exact issue came up. In his view, I get rid of Comey, I get rid of my problem. He goes, only someone like Trump who doesn't think things through would be that simplistic.
Well, even more simplistic, and it fits with your theory, is the romantic dinner that Trump invites James Comey to. So in his mind, if you're right, then Trump first says, maybe I can butter him up. And then feeling that Comey was, according to Comey in his own book, that he had awkward silences where he would just stare at him and refuse to give in and say, "Hey, I'll give you my undying loyalty," or whatever he wanted.
How about the chicken? That's some
how
chicken,
about the chicken? Right? Hey, will you let Flynn go? Hey, the chicken's great.
Wow,
right?
This is great. These vegetables got to be fresh, Mr. President.
So it's consistent.
Yeah, but also that meeting too, buddy. I mean, I've talked about it in this show. I'm not sure with you, but we know very well that the day before that meeting is when Sally Yates goes to Don McGahn and says, huge. Mike Flynn, we got him on tape lying. And what else happens the same day of the meeting? That morning, FBI shows up at George Papadopoulos' house, knocks on the door for the first time out of the blue, and talks to him about Russian ties. That's in the morning. In the afternoon, you got Trump calling. And at the time we learned, now all these things backdated, that Papadopoulos was still in touch with a pretty high-ranking Trump guy from the transition,
right?
Because it was all a transition, and the guy's name escapes me. The big, heavy-set guy.
Yeah, he was the radio guy, right? Was he a
I don't know if he was a radio guy? He may have been. Look at radio guy, but in any event, everything is there. He had this dinner to test Comey's loyalty because the FBI is investigating his guys.
Right,
2 of them, not just one.
And he believes in his mind that if he gets rid of Comey, he cuts off everybody in the FBI who would even consider investigating him. But
what else did he do, though? He got rid of Andy McCabe. He got rid of Peter Strzok.
That's right.
I mean, you went like the who's who of people who were involved in this. They're gone.
Yeah. It's a slow Saturday night massacre that happened not in one night, but in over months and months and months.
If you read about this in another country, you would say a leader is purging their intelligence agency to get rid of those who are not loyal.
It's like
in the United States of America, we don't have that. On Fox News, and even today, Lindsey Graham today, I'll play the clip in a second. I'll just tell you what it said. I'll represent to you what it said. Lindsey Graham said to William Barr, "Will you investigate the FBI reading Peter Strzok text messages and investigate it?" So today in this hearing, they're still bringing up the FBI is the bad ones. No chance it could be Donald Trump.
Right.
This is stunning.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And when you say that, it called to mind that grainy video from 20 years ago of Saddam Hussein calling out people in his auditorium and then just being taken out one by one, and you don't really know what happened to them, although it was said they got killed. But little by little, you're right in that Trump has effected a purge in the spirit of the Saturday Night Massacre without it all happening in one night. I mean, little by little, those who oppose him are gone. And he only tends to appoint those who are favorable to him. And I think that's why Barr's testimony today might have even bothered Trump somewhat if he was paying attention.
I think he did. It was a long day to watch, though. But
you can see how Barr, if you're here, I like to think of this kind of thing. If you're one of Trump's advisors, think of it this way. Your motives are, I want to please the king. At the same time, I want to have a career when this guy's gone, right? Which could be in a year and a half, or it could be in 4 years. Either way, you know, if you're an advisor and you're an attorney, you're thinking about your career, you're thinking about your ethical obligations, and you tell him, listen, this is a good selection out of all the selections. He's a Washington known quantity. He'll get confirmed, and he wrote this memo. He's great. But you're also not recommending to the president that he appoint some crazy, insane loyalist who will say anything to make Trump happy. And there are those folks out there. I think
Matt Whitaker, if he would have kept the DAG, his acting AG, the hot tub salesman.
Whitaker is an example of somebody, I think, who really wanted this job, was very ambitious, and probably would have maybe not made a direct promise to Donald Trump, but would have known where he would have danced with the one who brung him to the dance.
Sure,
ultimately,
because he had no other. His history is not as good as Bill Barr. William Barr actually, for me, is almost the best we could hope for in the world that the president can pick, nominate who they want. That's their right. It's up to, and the Senate is Republican controlled. They can confirm with 51 votes, or 50, I guess, if you keep Pence. If you have 50, I think you need 51 or 50 to 51. Confirm. So you could, in the world that they control all the votes, this is the best we can hope for, honestly. I think Barr.
I think you're right, and I think today confirmed it. Although, I mean, there's still things to be concerned about, but a lot of this we knew from his statement. A lot of it we knew from his memo. But he, you know, it's interesting. For someone whose views were already known, many of his answers were, I won't say evasive, but they left open escape hatches. I mean, he said, you know, look, I'll take the ethics advice, but I'll make my own decision.
Right.
You know, was Sessions' recusal right? Well, I don't know. Based on what I've seen so far, yeah, you know, something like that. But he's very coy. He's very intelligent. But I also really liked the folksy look. I've had a career. I won't be bullied around because, you know, I don't need to
I'm too old for this crap
anybody.
From like Lethal Weapon, the first
really
one.
Is.
With
Danny Glover, yeah.
I'm too old for this crap. I did like when Senator Chris Coons from Delaware quoted the prosecutor from, I think it was when it was being confirmed, the Attorney General during Watergate, and asked him the same questions he was asked. And he did give a good answer about, would you resign before you would fire Robert Mueller without good reason? And he said, I would never fire him without good cause.
That's right.
And so he was treading lightly, but he was pretty clear. And he said things like, I'll not be bullied by anybody. I don't think he's going to allow his reputation, which has gone on for decades in the American government, to be destroyed by Donald Trump. I mean, taking this job, I'm sure, had to be a debate in his head.
Yes. Well, the reason you know it was is because I believe the Trump team already tried to bring him on as a lawyer.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And he declined.
Right.
And I think that's some of the most powerful evidence for somebody who views this as a calling and as part of his civic duty. Because there's the other part. How could you accuse a guy of ambition when he already had the job? I got to tell you, I'm the kind of person that he had it perfect. He was Attorney General for 1 year. That's the job I want. I want to get a federal judgeship and retire the week after that. Can get all the benefits and be called judge.
You did it for a
and
year?
Then ride off into the sunset. A year, I'd do it for 3 weeks. I wouldn't get through training.
And we have to go to break. But if you think about it, you're AG for a year, you come out, and how many law firms can offer you partner right after that? Because they can say, we have a former Attorney General as our partner, and that's a great sales pitch. And he had real significant relationships, obviously, in his administration. But I have to take a break. We'll come back and chat more with our friend Danny Cevallos of that. At this point, the question is not who connected to Donald Trump is a criminal. The question is anyone connected to Donald Trump who's not a criminal?
The Dean Obeidallah Show, SiriusXM Progress. You're listening to the Dean Obeidallah Show, Sirius XM's Progress.
Welcome back. Danny's grooving out to the music, the new music for the Dean Obeidallah Show. I'm here with Danny Cevallos, our Tuesday 8 p.m. segment, Law and Disorder. So this was interesting. This probably won't get that much press coverage, but Cory Booker pressed William Barr, Donald Trump's AG nominee, on, get this, folks, William Barr advocated for mass incarceration. And we'll have Danny give it context after we play the clip. Here's clip number 7. This is Cory Booker today.
During your previous 10 years Attorney General, you literally wrote the book on mass incarceration, or at least wrote this report, The Case for More Incarceration. You argue that we as a nation were, quote, incarcerating too few criminals.
In those days.
And that the solution was more incarceration for more people.
Excuse me.
Please, sir.
For chronic violent offenders and gun offenders.
Well, I mean that's the challenge, sir. And you argued against the bipartisan legislation in 2015 quite strenuously.
I did.
But that's not that's not the nature of incarceration in this country. In fiscal year 2016, only 7.7% of the federal prison population was convicted of violent crimes. Overwhelmingly, what was initiated in those times that led to an 800% increase in the federal prison population, overwhelmingly.
All right, so, and it goes on from there. The point is, so William Barr actually wrote a report, and his 1 year as AG, advocating, literally the report goes, the case for more mass incarceration, which now seems off the charts, insane, but Danny was giving us some context. So what was the context of that?
The context was the late 80s, the early 90s, even the Bill Clinton era was a time of tough on crime. That's when you have all, and it's interesting because now defense attorneys in the justice system, we're all dealing with the effects of that legislation because people are serving 20, 30-year lifetime sentences based on this tough on crime approach, which studies and modern science and all kinds of prevailing views now, they've changed. We no longer as a society believe that simply locking everybody up and being over punitive is the right answer. I mean, there still should be justice. There still should be incarceration is still a solution, but mass incarceration had a lot of problems, and the prevailing view now is that it didn't really work, or at least it's left us in modern times with a real overpopulation of prisons problem. And I have to say, I hear the frustration or the snarkiness in Bill Barr's voice, and I get that because, respectfully to Cory Booker, he's being a little disingenuous because, as Barr pointed out, that was violent crime. And the real complaint about overcriminalization is that it targets nonviolent crime. It targets individual drug users, not even suppliers necessarily. And I think no matter what, we've always been tough on gun violence, no matter what. And the real statistics are, yes, Cory Booker's right that nonviolent drug offenders make up a too large a percentage of our prisons. But when Cory Booker said that, he actually attacked his own earlier point, which was Barr's memo, which was about mass incarceration, but for violent offenders. So I think a little disingenuous, but his overall point is a good one.
And also, we can't forget that the crime bill signed by Bill Clinton became an issue in the 2016 campaign because Hillary Clinton had advocated for it.
That's right.
And used a term that we don't have to get back into it, but that made it seem really disrespectful to the African American community as super predators.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was a different time. And I remember that. And the crack epidemic, they would talk about it.
That's right.
In contrast now to the opioid crisis. It was a crack epidemic, but when it's people of color, it's an epidemic, put them in jail for a long time. An opioid crisis, we don't need to criminalize it. Let's find a nice way to deal with the issue. Don't get me wrong. I think both needed to be dealt with, but the double standard to me, and it's not me, so many people have called in and raised that exact point, which is absolutely true. So, but I think that was interesting that he brought that up. It didn't get much play or much press. I assume Bill Barr is going to get confirmed. Rick Unger was on last night. You know Rick Unger?
I've been on his show. I know Rick.
So
yeah.
Rick says that he thinks Democrats are going to come over and support Bill Barr. And I guess now after hearing him today, I could see like a Joe Manchin and a few others going, yeah, I can support him because I'm not just against everything Trump nominates. I have to be against the person because they're wrong, not just because they're a Trump nominee. And I imagine that'll be the Manchin, maybe a few others. I mean, the other ones are gone now. Joe Donnelly's gone from Indiana. He lost. Heidi Heitkamp lost in North Dakota. You know, Claire McCaskill's now a MSNBC contributor or CNN. She's got signed today. I think she went to MS and John Kasich went to CNN as contributors. They were just signed today.
I almost want Barr to be confirmed because I just have this vision of Trump criticizing him the way he did Sessions and Barr just not standing for it. I just have this feeling. I can see him. He almost came off as likably cantankerous in some of his responses, including that response to Cory Booker where he says "I did" or something like that.
Right, and Cory didn't respond to
didn't respond because Cory was knee deep in his speech and he was doing his thing.
It was a Spartacus 2 moment.
Right. Yes.
This is Spartacus the sequel. Let me go here.
Yes.
And I like Cory Booker, folks. I just think it's funny that
I do too.
Let's take a quick break. We'll come back the last minute here with our friend Danny Cevallos.
Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127. The Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.
And welcome back. Dean Obadala Show. We're live right here. I hope tomorrow, miss me. I hope you'll miss me, but Naira Hawk will be here doing a great job. I will be in New Jersey again, moderating a town hall with New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy at the Islamic Center of Passaic County in Patterson. It's free. You don't have to be Muslim, any religion. You're all welcome because we're going to convert you all to Islam. No, I'm kidding. And free falafel? No, there's no free food.
No.
But if you want to attend, if you're in the North Jersey area, drop me an email, dean@deanofradio.com. I'll send you the Eventbrite. But we have already over 500 RSVPs. It holds like 700 people. So it's going to be good. And we'll play it. We'll record it and play it next week. So, Dan, we got a minute left. What would you like to share with the audience?
Oh, we have a minute left. Well, I happen to have the transcript from today's hearing. If you don't mind, I'd like to read it from beginning to end. So may I begin?
And the music underneath, as usual. Danny's going to put it the song.
No time?
He's going to put the
next time.
transcript under music. Danny, thanks very much for coming in. I
Thanks
know
for
that
having
I
me.
learned more. I always learn from Danny. Check him out on MSNBC or on Twitter at Cevallos Law. Thanks for tuning in. Tomorrow night, Nair will be here. I'll be back Thursday. I'm on Twitter at Dean Obidala, or I'm Needy, or Facebook.com/Dean of Radio. Have a great night. Talk to you Thursday.